Welcome to our Monday edition of the Word of Encouragement, and it's just a joy and privilege for me to be able to spend these few minutes with you. Today I'm going to look at the story of Joseph. In fact, the very conclusion of it. It's quite a story. Joseph had everything go wrong humanly. He had been loved by his father. He was a man that wanted the blessing of his father. He had the heart of the covenant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, his father. He did right and did not allow the influence of his brothers to overtake him. And yet, he's betrayed by them. He's sent as a slave to Egypt. And then after God blesses him, he again is wronged and sent to prison wrongfully as he withstood the advances of Potiphar's wife. But there God blesses. And then, of course, we know the whole story of how God put him maybe in the most difficult of all positions, that's being second in command in Egypt, the most powerful dynasty on earth. And yet, God used him mightily. Now, I give all that background to say that it's really hard to even imagine the hurt that he went through. To have your own brothers betray you. He heard them talking about killing him, and then they sell him. It doesn't get any lower than that. A disregard for the father that he loved. Cut off from his father. And then finally, after a number of years of faithfully serving Potiphar and God blessing him, then to be betrayed by this man that he trusted. And yet, in the midst of all of this, he had a dream of what God was going to do through his life. And he kept right on believing God. And I say all that to say that when we get to the conclusion, when the brothers come back to him after their father had died, he is very open with him about how he viewed this whole matter. In verse 19 of chapter 50, "And Joseph said unto them, Fear not, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, you thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good." Now, God used this entire set of circumstances to bring about the protection for the nation of Israel. Now, of course, it's just right now the sons and their own wives and families, but at the point that Joseph was betrayed, they could not have carried on the covenant of Abraham and Isaac. But God used all of what Joseph went through, not only to protect them physically with the famine, God could have rearranged that, but to use the agony that those men went through and how Joseph treats them to bring them to a place of honoring their father, honoring Jehovah God, and by the time Jacob dies, all 12 sons fear and honor God and have come into a right relationship. That's why we have the nation of Israel, the 12 tribes of Israel. God did a mighty work. And Joseph said, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. And you can look around you right now and you see a lot of things that you would say, this has all been for evil. This isn't right. This isn't fair. But I promise you, if you and I will trust God, we'll be able to say years down the road, Satan, evil men have been maybe very wrong in their motives and what they've done. But God's awakened the church. God's done a work in our nation. God has been able to make it good, make it wonderful, even when men have had evil motives. And we've got to believe that. And I believe God's working today. The same God that used Joseph to deliver is ready to use each one of us to deliver this world. As we think of all that Christ has done for us, we need to have that heart. God's on the throne, and he means it for good.